Hi and welcome to Code with Stein. This is part 9 of building a time tracking CSS using Django and Vue. In this part I will make it possible to track time directly in the browser. So instead of going to a task and add time to it, we're just going to make it possible to click start and the time will start to record. So the first thing I need to do is to create a globally available active entry function. To do this, I first go up to the project app. And inside here I create a new file called context processors.py. This is where I will be adding globally available functions. So first I import something from Python. From datetime, import datetime and time zone. And I need some things from Django, import Django. Oops. From Django.shortcuts import get object or 404. And then I need to import some modals. From apps.project.modals import entry. And I need the theme model from apps.theme.modals import theme. And then I add the context processors. I'm going to create one called def active entry. It just looks like a normal function in Python. Pass in the request parameter. Here I want to check if the user is authenticated. If request.user is authenticated. And if it is, I need to check if the user has an active theme ID. If request.user.userprofile.active theme ID, then I can get the theme by saying theme equals get object or 404, pass in the theme model, and the primary key is the same as this, so I can just copy it, and also the status needs to be theme.active. And then I want to get the untracked entries, which is entries we have tracked but are not connected to a task yet. So untracked entries equals entry.objects.filter theme equals theme created by equals request.user minutes equals 0 and is tracked equals false. So the ones who have minutes set to 0 means that we have started the tracking but no time has been added to it yet. And then I check if there are any untracked entries by saying this, and then we get the newest one by saying active entry equals untracked entries dot first, active entry dot second since equals convert to integer, datetime.now, timezone.utc minus active entry dot created at dot total seconds. So this will give us the amount of seconds is the bin since we started tracking this entry. And then we can return this by saying return, create a dictionary, active entry seconds, active entry dot seconds since, start time, that was when we started this tracking, active entry dot created at dot ISO format, because we need to get this in milliseconds since the start, so we can use it together with JavaScript. And if we are not authenticated, we can just return this, same here, but we say 0, and we can set start time to now, datetime.now, ISO format, and close the dictionary and save. And then we need to tell Django about this by going into Minutos settings.py, and at the bottom of templates context processors, you add this here, apps.project.context processors.active entry, and save. Can check the command line. Okay, no errors. Perfect. And then I can go to base.html and add buttons there. So here, together with the dashboard and project, here we are authenticated. So then I can say div class navbar item, and I only want to show this if we are not tracking time. So v if not tracking time, div class buttons, a class button is success, so to show a green button for starting the clock, at click start timer, span class icon, want to show icon from font awesome, I class fast fa-stop watch, close the I and close the span start. And we can copy this, paste it below, and we only want to show this if we are tracking time. So we want to show a stop button. Stop is warning, so it's yellow. Change the on-click function to stop timer, and then the rest can be like this. Actually, here I want to show how many seconds we have been tracking. So I add readable seconds. This is a function I will show you soon how we are going to fix. And save. And then I need to scroll to the bottom where we add the scripts, and above this one, because we can't add it in here because then it will be overridden on the sub pages. So here we just need to say script and close it. Script var navbar app equals data return seconds, and this is the active entry seconds we get from the context processor, so it's this variable. And then tracking time should be set default to false, and show tracking modal can be set to false. Timer is null, so you can start and stop a timer. Entry ID can set this default to 0. Start time, start underscore time. This is the second variable we get from the context processor. Then we need to set the delimiters. Oops. And we need a couple of functions or methods. So start timer, we can just set this to be empty for now, and stop timer like that. And when we are mounted, we want to check if we have any seconds here. So if this is 0 or it's greater. So we say mounted. This is one of the lifecycle hooks from Vue. If this dot seconds isn't 0, then this dot tracking time is true, and this dot timer equals set interval. So we call this 1 time per second. This dot seconds equals new date, create a JavaScript date object, minus new date, this dot start time, divided by 1000, and this should be called 1 time per 1000 milliseconds. Therefore I divide it by 1000 up here. And the last thing before we can test this is to add the readable seconds. So instead of showing number of seconds, we want to show minutes and seconds and so on. So I create a computed value, computed readable seconds, which is almost like a function, and this I have already made from before, so I can just copy this You can pause the video now and write it yourself, like that. And then I just need to tell Vue to create a new app. Vue.createApp navbar app.mount navbar app. I think I already created this. If I scroll up to the top, it says so here, div navbar app. Perfect. So now I can refresh and I see the start timer there. If I inspect this, hopefully I don't have any errors. No, great. And if I start it, nothing happens because we haven't done anything to the start timer function yet. So now I can set the first task here to done, and I can set the second task to done as well. Next step is to create an API function for starting, stopping and discarding time. So inside the project app we create a new file, api.py. First I want to import a few things from Python. Import JSON, and then I want to import Django functionality. From Django.http import JSON response, and from Django.shortcuts import get object or 404. Then I need the modals. From .modals import project and entry, and from apps.team.modals import team. And then I want the API views. First I begin with the start timer, def API start timer, pass in the request, and then we create a new entry. Entry equals entry.objects.create. Team ID is request.user.userprofile.active team ID. Minutes is 0. Created by equals request.user is tracked equals false. And then we can just return true to the user. Return JSON response success, set this to true. Then we can create a similar function for stopping the timer. Def API stop timer request. But now I want to get the entry from the database. Get team ID is the same as up here, and created by also needs to be the request.user. Minutes equals 0 and is tracked equals false. There will always just be maximum 1 with all of these values. So then we can say tracked time equals int date time dot now time zone dot utc minus entry dot created at dot total seconds divided by 60. If tracked, sorry, this was supposed to be if tracked minutes, and if tracked minutes is less than 1, then we set it to 0, not to 1, because we don't want to have a value lower than 1 minute. And then we can set entry.minutes to be tracked minutes, and entry.isTracked can just be false, and entry.save. Then we can return same as up here, but I also want to append the entry ID, entry.id. Now I need to import the date time as well before I forget it. From date time import date time and time zone and save. So then just want to check the command line, still no errors, perfect. Then we can create the last function, which is a function for discarding the timer if we don't want to save what we have done. So def API discard timer request, and the way we get it here is by saying entries equals entry.objects.filter team ID equals the same thing as up here, and created by is request.user and is tracked equals false, and we need to order this by order by minus created at, so we know that we get the newest one. If entry equals entries.first entry.delete, and then we return a success message back to the user and save. So now I can set this task to done. Just want to import this to the URLs file here. So from .api import API start timer, API stop timer, and API discard timer. I can append this at the bottom here. Path API /start timer, API start timer, and name API start timer. Then I can copy this. Stop timer. Just replace the values. Discard timer. Like that. Perfect. So now we can go back to base.html and implement the functions for starting and stopping the time. So in here, when we click start timer, we want to call fetch, and this will talk to the backend. So fetch dashboard /projects/API /start timer, and we need to pass in some data here. Set method to post, and we need to set the headers, so it tells some information to the server. Content-type is application/JSON, and we need a CSRF token. So x-CSRF token, CSRF token. And we don't need to pass in anything more than this, because now the Django function knows to start a new tracking. And when that's done, we just say .then response should be a fat arrow function. This .start time equals new date. This .tracking time equals true, and this .timer equals set interval. Oops, like that. Create a new fat arrow function. This .seconds equals new date minus this .start time divided by 1000, and we want to call it 1 time per second. And that's the start timer. Next is the stop timer. Here I can just copy the top here, paste it, replace it with stop timer, and here we get some information back. So instead of just saying this, here we can say return response.json, so we can use it. Then result. This .entry ID equals result.entry ID. This is what we get from the server in here. And then we say this .show tracking modal equals true. I will implement this soon. And this .tracking time equals false, because now we stopped the timer. and window dot clear timeout, this dot timer. And then I can also create one last function here for discarding the timer. So I can copy this, discard timer. This can just be the same, but we don't need to return this. Here we can just say this dot seconds equals 0, and this dot show tracking model equals false. And I want one function for adding things later. This will not be implemented yet. Add later. This dot seconds equals 0, and this dot show model is also set to false. So if I now refresh here, okay, I get an error. Okay, I wrote import instead of import. Import. Okay, the error gone. Perfect. And if I now click start, okay, I get the internal server error. Where is that error coming from? Okay, is tracked is false on API.pyline24. Okay, it's because I need to set the project and task should be able to be blank. So is now blank equals true and null equals true. Copy, do the same with both task and the project. If I now just stop the server and update the database, migrate, run the server again. So if I refresh now, everything is okay. Start, get a new error. Okay, created at is empty. Okay, so here we will create this timer. We also need to say created at equals date time dot now, I think. So if you now save, no errors. You can try this again. Start. Okay, got the new error. But everything in the backend seems to be working. Perfect. So this is just something from JavaScript. You don't have to think about it yet. Okay, so I can just do the same as I did here. So just copy these 3 lines, paste them here. Instead of saying response, we just say result and save. Maybe this will work. So now you see that the timer has started. Perfect. So sorry, a little bit messy here now, but we will soon make things work a little bit better. Just set this to done. And then we can create the model. So when we stop this, we want to see a little screen where you can choose what you want to do with the time we have tracked. So if I just go back to base.html and scroll up to the nav bar, below here I said div class modal class. Just want to show this if show tracking model is true. So is active show tracking model. Then we close that and close this div. Div class modal background. And then below here, div class modal card, div class, div modal card head, p class modal card title, tracked time, div class modal card body, p you have tracked readable seconds, so we know how much we have tracked, and div or footer class modal card foot, and we need to add 3 buttons here. Button class button is primary, at click add to task, add to task. Actually this can just be empty for a little while. button class button is success, add later, button class button is danger, discard. So if you now save this, so if I now refresh, click stop. Okay, so I had a little typo in the function name here in Vue. So instead of saying stop timer twice, this should say discard timer. So if I now refresh, you'll see that the timer has stopped. But I can start it again. No, true is not defined. Of course, because JavaScript doesn't use true with a capital T. So true. Great, but at least it's starting. So if I now click stop, you'll see this time. You'll track 21 seconds. Command line says that I stopped this. Perfect. So now I can choose add to task, add later, or discard the timer. So we can begin by implementing this discard timer button. So if I just copy the function name, and when we click this at click, we just call discard timer. So now I can refresh, start, stop. If I click discard, it's closed and everything is gone. And here you can see we discarded the timer. Perfect. If I click add to task, I'm going to be redirected to a different page, which I'm going to fix later in this episode. But the add later function is created already. So we can copy this, scroll up, and click add later and save. So now I think I can go to the to-do list and set this to done. Before I continue, I just want to say thanks to my Patreons. If you too want to support me, you will find a link to my Patreon in the description below. And now I want to show untracked entries on the dashboard. So when you click start and add later, they should appear here on the dashboard page. And just close that. So if I now go to the views.py inside the dashboard app, I can get the untracked entries here. Untracked entries equals entry dot objects dot filter theme equals theme created by equals request dot user is tracked equals false. So that status has to be set to false so we can get the correct ones. And we can order these by when it was created in descending order minus created at. And then I want to loop through these and change a little bit. So for untracked entry in untracked entries, untracked entry dot minutes since, so we know when it was started, equals int date time dot now time zone dot utc minus entry dot created at dot total seconds and divided by 60. And then I can append this untracked entries to the context so we can use it in the front end and save. Okay, everything seems to be okay. And then I can open up dashboard.html. And above the theme, I can copy this. And I can copy the notification. And I want the title. So I can just copy this h2 and say your untracked entries. Just save and see that everything is okay. Yes, it's appearing here. That's perfect. So now I want the table, copy a little bit here. th started, so we know when it was started. th time, that's the amount of time we have tracked. th status. th add to task, this will be a button. and th discard. This will be another button. tr, thead, tbody, and we can just close the table as well before I forget it. And in here I want to loop through the untracked entries. So for entry in untracked entries, and for tr td entry.created at, you can save and see if it's working. No, there are no untracked entries. I don't think that is correct, but I will fix it soon. I can just make this ready first. td if entry.minutes equals 0, then we show this entry.minutes since so we know when it was started. Pipe it into format minutes. Else we want to show how many minutes we have tracked, or it was registered with. Minutes, and pipe it into format minutes, and if. So this is the one which is running now, and this is the one we have clicked stopped on but not appended to a project and task. td if entry.minutes equals 0 in progress, else untracked, and if. And then I want the button href can just be empty for now. Add to task, and td href also empty. Delete and save. But since there are no data, it's not going to work. Okay, so I forgot to add an s here, which made a few problems, but still I see that I don't get any untracked entries there, but they are in the database, so there has to be something wrong. So if I go to views.py in the dashboard, untracked entries, where the team I get up here, so that should be okay. Created by is okay, and is tracked is okay. Okay, I found out that I added this in the Vue user function. That's not good. So I can just cut it out of there, remove it from this list, scroll up here and paste the function or code here. Then I can copy this, paste it, and save. So if I now refresh, entry is not defined. No, because it's supposed to be untracked entry there. So now I can save it, refresh, and now I have one untracked entry here, which I can either add to a task or I can delete it. As you can see here, it's 2 minutes, the same as up here. Perfect. But if I now click stop and add later, just refresh, you'll see that this is untracked instead of in progress. Perfect. So now I want to make it possible to click this delete button. So then I need a new view in the project. Yep. So at the bottom here, I can copy this, actually all of these 5 lines. Okay, I have already created this function. I didn't remember that I already done it, and it's here already. Okay, project task and entry. So if I go back here, I can activate it. URL delete entry, entry.project.id, entry. Actually, I can't use this function because this shouldn't have a project. So I need to create a new function. Just copy this, delete untracked entry, and I don't need a project ID and the task ID. It can just be like this. So remove that line, and then I can return the user back to the dashboard and remove this. Okay, so now I can copy this, go back to the urls.py, import the view, and I can say down here, path, delete untracked entry, int entry ID, and then the view, and give it a name like that. And then inside the dashboard we use this view, and here we just say entry.id. Now we can save, go back here and refresh. No reverse, no, sorry, I have to add a prefix like that. Refresh. If I click it now, the entry was deleted and we don't have anything here. Perfect. So we can create a new one. Stop, add later. Great. Now we want to make it possible to do this, which is make it possible to track untracked entries. To do that, I need to create a new view. So if I go to project and views.py, I can copy these lines here, go to the bottom and say track entry. Here we just want the entry ID and get this by doing this. Then I want all of the projects equals team.projects.all. And if request.method is post, then we know that the form has been submitted. Hours equals int request.post.get hours. Default can be 0. Copy this, replace it with minutes and minutes. And then we want to get the project from the form. Project equals request.post.get project, and the same with the task, project and task. Then we can say entry.project ID equals project, and entry.task ID equals task, entry.minutes equals hours multiplied by 60 plus minutes. Entry.created at equals %s. There we get request.post.get date, very similar to the edit entry function this. And we want the entry.created at.time. So then we get a new created at date, entry.save. Then we create a new message, messages.info, request, the time was tracked, return redirect, back to the dashboard. And if it's not a post request, we need to get the hours and minutes by saying div mod entry.minutes by 60. Create a context dictionary, hours, minutes, team, and all of the projects. Whoops. And the entry we want to track. And then we say return render request project / track entry.html and context. Then we can import this to the URLs. Just append it at the end here. Track entry. Copy this and say track entry. Copy and replace, and save. So there's no errors, so hopefully everything is okay. So we can go to the dashboard, and here we can say URL project track entry.id, and save, refresh. Better to click this, but we have not created the template yet. So then we can go back here, create a new template in the projects templates folder. Save it as track entry.html. I've already created the code for this. So first we extend the base template and we set the title. Then we create the breadcrumbs just like every other page, and the columns. Here we need to set the track entry app because we're going to use Vue.js. Then we set the title and the new form with the CSRF token. Here we have a field where we can select which project we are going to use. So when we select a new project, we call a function called getTasks. So we get all of the tasks connected to this project. Here we say option value empty, so we need to select a project before we can continue. And when here we loop through the projects and just set the ID and show the title. And down here we use Vue.js to loop through all of the tasks we get when we have chosen a project. And down here we say hours and minutes, just like the edit entry. So we can select between hours and how many minutes we tracked if you need to change this. We also have a new field for date if you need to change what date we did this. At the bottom here we create a new block script and a track entry app. We have a list of tasks, but first it's just empty and the task is just select project first. And then we have a property for project and one for the task we have selected. Then we added delimiters and a list of methods. The getTasks is a function that will be called when we select a project. And we don't do that if it's not empty. We call this fetch function where we get the tasks from the backend. I will implement this soon. And then we get a JSON response back from the server. And then we set this tasks, which is this, to the tasks we get from the server. And then we set one task at the beginning, which is select task, so it can't be empty. And if the project is empty, so we select the select project, we just go back to what it was at first. Then we create a new Vue app. Now we can save this. If you don't want to write all of this code, you will find a link to the GitHub repository in the description below. But it's almost the same code as in edit entry. So then we can create the API function for this. So at the bottom here, I already created a function called API getTasks. First we get the project ID from the URL parameter. Then we check if it has been set. Create a new list called tasks. Then we get the team to know that we only get the project from this team. And then we get the project based on the team we have active. Here I loop through all of the tasks connected to this project and serialize them by creating a new dictionary and appending it to the list of tasks. When that's done, I return them and I set success to true, and the tasks is a list of tasks. So I can save this and then I can go into the urls.py and import it up here together with the other API functions. Path API /getTasks, pass in the name, and then I set the name to the same as the function and save. And then I can go back to base.html and go down to the script at the bottom here, create a new method called add_to_task. Here I just want to redirect the user by saying window.location.href/dashboard/projects/track entry. and then I join the string by saying this.entry ID plus that. So now I can copy this, scroll up, and I find the function there. So when we click this, we want to be redirected to that page, and I can also do the same thing for the dashboard.html, add to task, track entry. Perfect. So if I now refresh, you will see that I have entry with ID 10. There are no tasks, but if I click project 1B, this changed and I have 2 tasks connected to 1B. If I set test 2, change this to 10 minutes and submit, time was tracked. Perfect. Almost, because it didn't work. So I changed this to 10 minutes, so that was okay, but it still says untracked. So I have to go back to views.py in the project. If request method post. Yes, because here I need to set this to entry.tracked equals true and save. So if I now refresh, add to task, select project, select task, submit. Sorry, it's a typo, it is tracked, of course. Okay, refresh, try one more time, task, submit, and now it's gone from here and appended at the up here. Test 2, project, and 10 minutes. Perfect. And the same thing should work up here. If I click stop, add to task. Okay, it's not working, sorry. Sorry, I forgot to add the at, like that. So now I can refresh again, start, stop, add to task. So I have the ID 13 here. Select the task, like that, say task 1, 1 hour, 0 minutes, submit. So you can see, task 1, project 1B, and 1 hour. Perfect. So now everything up here should work. Even if I click start, go here, switch theme, if I activate this one, you'll see that now I don't track any time up here. But if I go back to my account and activate the other theme, it's still tracking time up here. Perfect. Now I can click stop, add later. And if I go back to the dashboard, you'll see that I have a couple of untracked entries here, which I can delete if I don't want them. Perfect. And now it's time to wrap up this part of the series. Thank you for following along. If you liked it, please click like and share below. If you have any questions, feel free to add them below and I will answer as soon as I can. In the next part of this series, I will make it possible to start implementing the plans so we can have limitations on projects and tasks and similar. So, see you in the next video.